television shows, music, movies, and video games. The content we consume every day that keeps us entertained. It's our window to a different world, letting us dive into different stories, cultures, and ideas. Living in the 21st century, we are surrounded by technology and social media. Being able to discover a song or even a film dating back from the 80s or even the 2000s is hardly impossible with the internet around. A quick search on YouTube or even using Shazam, and with the snap of your fingers, you pretty much found what you're looking for. But what about the times where we can't? Ever experience that frustrating moment when you're desperately trying to track down a song, but all you have are scattered lyrics? Even typing out what you may think it is, but still being met with nothing, almost as if what you're searching for doesn't exist. That's practically what lost media is. Lost media, referring to any form of recorded content that is believed to have been forgotten or no longer exist in any format. This is mainly due to accidental destruction or even neglect. Certain projects can often get misplaced, which leads to their disappearance from the public view, or even go through distribution, but never gets aired at all. There are numerous cases of clips of media which people have discovered yet haven't been able to track back to its creation. Pilot episodes from old animated series, commercials that never aired, or even test animations for motion pictures which were discovered decades after their initial release are examples. There's something unsettling about stumbling upon a work of media that carries no apparent creative footprint. Perhaps it's just the fear of the unknown. Or maybe we were never meant to find it in the first place. People over the internet are so fascinated by this concept, even being a whole community from Discord servers to Reddit forums, and even social media apps such as TikTok and YouTube, dedicated to finding where pieces of old media came from. In some cases, the searches are successful, and pieces of media do get found. Today, we're talking about the case of the 20-year-old abandoned CD, which 4chan users were able to track and trace back the members of the group.
Hey, I picked this up because it looked interesting. I wasn't able to find any reference to it whatsoever, even with super obscure bands. You might expect to find some old MySpace page or some mentions in a forum. Does anyone recognize this album? I half expected it to be noise pop or some vaporwave wankery. Listening to it now, track 1 is like hella lo-fi shoegaze, with noise panning back and forth. This isn't some viral marketing bull. I'm just curious if anyone can shed some light on it, and I'm slightly excited by the prospect of owning a rare album.
July 2016, an anonymous 4chan user uploaded an EP questioning the internet if anyone knew of the album. The CD had an interesting cover featuring a sketch face of a female in a manga art style. The cover read Panchiko in a bold font, across with death metal. This quickly sparked the attention of users as they started requesting for the CD's audio files so they can hear the tracks for themselves, which then the users were quick to respond and handed out a link to the EP. The CD suffered from noticeable disc rot as the tracks were overlapped by this intrusive noise, making the music sound distorted. This led to some users theorizing that this issue could have just been from the recording process of the EP, while some others suggested that it might have been an intentional artistic choice. Despite the CD's poor qualities, the tracks remained somewhat lucid, allowing users to listen and appreciate the music, which surprisingly, many actually found themselves captivated by the surreal atmosphere the tracks exuded. With the name death metal, one would be expecting to come into tracks hearing some metal or at least rock, but the EP could only be described as being from the genre shoegaze or early 2000s lo-fi. Theories sparked on the origins of the band, whether they were a Japanese band due to the misspelling of the popular Japanese arcade game Pachinko. The lyrics and images of the band also seem to have influence from otaku culture, hence the cover featuring a panel from the manga Midnight Okuma. Some even suggested that the EP was some sort of clever marketing ploy by some indie band looking to promote their music, or a publicity stunt, as it was revealed that the CD's original user had stumbled upon the CD in an Oxfam store in Nottingham, England. This theory resulted in some users losing interest in the search and moved on, but also debunked the theory on the band being Japanese, but in fact British instead. Nonetheless, there were still no answers. Who exactly was this band? The EP was re-uploaded onto YouTube by the user Dismiss herself, making the EP gain even more traction with hundreds and thousands of views. Death metal began bouncing over the internet with new fans and people to join the search, which resulted in a Discord server being created, even Reddit forums. There was a whole community from all parts of the world dedicating to find this band, and they weren't going to stop it until they did. This led to the hunt for the band members, beginning on the Panchiko Discord server, which was filled with over 1,000 members. Now, actually tracking down the members of the band was almost impossible, as the only information had on them were their first names on the back of the CD. Andy, Owain, John, Sean, pretty common British names, but also not enough to work with. However, this was no joke. Online enthusiasts were so eager to find this band that hours were spent scouring the internet, even going as far as combing through indie musicians' profiles across the UK with matching names.
It's not me. Never heard of it.
Another email went out.
Original poster of that 4chan thread probably made the album himself,
said a user. The case was starting to die down. Heading back to square one, email after email, members of the internet began speculating it was all a hoax and began to disbelieve that Panchiko would ever be found. After years since the 4chan thread back in 2016, the quest to find Panchiko was still on. Researchers eventually pinpointed the exact Oxfam in Nottingham Sherwood High Street where the EP was purchased. The breakthrough came when Owain, who was listed as the leader, was finally located in the Nottingham region.
Are you the lead singer of Panchiko?
Owain was awoken up to a message from Facebook, initially dismissing it as a joke, given he actually hadn't heard of the name since secondary school. How could people know about Panchiko? Only 20 copies of the EP were ever taped and was intended for family and friends, and possibly some record labels. The message continued, revealing how a group of fans were on a year-long request to locate the members of the EP Death Metal, demanding to get their hands on a remastered copy as the version they found was distorted. This left Owain confused. Why did the people like the music? To him it was just an EP him and his mates released nearing the time of their secondary school when they were only 16 to 17. After going back and forth, debating on if this was just some random internet troll trying to mess with him, Owain finally came to his senses and realized maybe this isn't a joke. Finally, he decided to reach out to Andy, the bassist of the band, telling him the news, which at the time, he was actually in Korea with his girlfriend. Stunned by hearing their newfound fandom, this then resulted to getting back into contact with the other band members, Sean and John. And just like that, Panchiko was back together, but the puzzle hadn't quite been solved yet. Fans still wanted an official release of the EP. Panchiko was a band founded in 1997, which consisted of childhood friends in Nottingham, Andy, Owain, Sean and John, who chose to stay anonymous through keeping their surnames hidden. The band would then go on to produce the EP Death Metal, which took inspiration from bands such as Super Furry Animals and Radiohead, and released the EP in the year 2000. Now, since this was the early 2000s, this was the time period where people would actually need record labels in order to get into the music industry, and in order to do this, it would be through handing in an EP or an album to a record label, or even handing out your own mixtape to the public. Unlike today where social media is very prominent, it's very easy to become an independent artist and promote yourself, but as the band was hardly getting any recognition and deals, they disbanded not long ago after in 2002, leaving Panchiko to fade into oblivion. The band packed their dreams away of becoming famous and chose to continue on a mundane life. Owain went to continue with his education, as at the time they were nearing the end of sixth form. Andy stuck in the world of music, mixing and mastering for several bands along with some of their own projects. Sean went on to travel around the world, becoming a tree surgeon. Who would have known 20 years after the release there would be a whole storm of people on the internet trying to find its source. The original CD did in fact suffer from disc rot due to old aging and was not the band who purposely made the tracks sound so malformed. Owain was almost certain the original tracks were lost forever, although he continued to look, which then eventually he was able to locate the original 2 months later. The original recording of the EP alongside with the disc rock version, which some like Andy Owain seemed to enjoy more, was featured on the EP. Their music quickly ramped up with millions of listens, as the case had finally been solved after 4 years. This even brought a new crowd of fans joining in to enjoy the music. Panchiko had their first ever gig. A long queue of devoted Panchiko lovers stood outside of the 400 capacity venue in Nottingham, most being in their late teens to early 20s. Fans have been waiting impatiently for their first look at the mysterious band. This was the first time ever that they would meet the official band members, since no photos or videos have ever been shown of them. The crowd filled with excitement as Panchiko made their way onto the stage and performed Death Metal, the song which made them rise to fame. The band members were struck by the level of fans' devotion reaction to their music, especially after discovering that some had traveled from London, Ireland, and even Belgium. They were even more taken aback by the sight of supporters with Panchiko tattoos. Panchiko merchandise was even sold after the gig, and fans even got the chance to have their CDs, faces, and shoes signed by the members themselves. Their next major gig ended up happening in February of 2022 in London Hackney, and are currently embarking in a US tour for their fans overseas. A hoax? Even now, being 4 years after the case was solved. Some people still had the doubts on the band's rise to stardom and assumed that Panchiko was all a scam. Right after the 4chan forum, the band were discovered so quickly that it almost felt like it had to be staged. It's almost unbelievable how the band were able to restore the files of the EP right after being reunited. How were they even able to sell CD pressings and t-shirts at their first gig when finding a manufacturing company to produce that amount of goods in such a short time is near to impossible? Some even went on as far to deny that death metal recordings could have been possibly produced around the year 2000. But this allegation was debunked as a member of Panchiko contacted Simon Williams, the owner of the record labels, and issued a reply indicating that Panchiko had submitted to the label a demo of the EP back in 2000. It had also been found that the band had started from choosing to do cover songs in local pubs to competing in Battle of the Bands at Berlin in Knockley, Nottingham on July 5th against 17 other bands. Whether or not if Panchiko was just a whole setup for some viral marketing campaign, there's only one answer to this question. Incidents like these just happen, especially being in the time of the early 2000s where the internet wasn't as prevalent as it is now. So even if being a chance Panchiko was mentioned online at the time, the page would have eventually been taken down due to internet archiving not being as strictly enforced as it is now. Aside from the speculations and theories, I think it's important to acknowledge how amazing it is that a whole internet community was able to bring a long disbanded group back together with so little information. It's so incredible how people from all over the world can unite and build connections through music and shed light on how great songwriting and melodies have such a huge impact on making a project enjoyable. Well, apart from the fact that the found CD actually suffered from discra, whatever. Panchiko did in fact go on to releasing more music, such as demos from 1997 to 2001, and releasing 2 albums in the year 2022, and the most recent one, Failed at Maths, in 2023.